Hello all. Welcome to the series of UI orbit sessions, which we conduct for the contribution from Globant UI engineering team to the community. This is a series of events which we conduct from the Globant UI engineering studio to touch base on several topics which we come across while working on real-time projects. Uh, and I'll hand it over to Mayank. Thank you.
Hey, hello everyone. Mayank Vora from UI Engineering Studio, Pune, Globant. And today in this UI Orbit session, I'm going to talk about async programming with using observables. So those who are from Angular 2 plus background, they must be aware of like these observables are the integral part of their framework and they are used everywhere. And also who did not work on Angular, still it can be a good starter learning for the guys, because it is coming native to JavaScript. Right now it is not, but with the help of a library we are using this concept. So sooner or later it is going to be the part of the JavaScript ecosystem, the way the promises were initially. So this is like I'm going to talk about in this series, and I'll stop 2 to 3 times to take your questions in between, and we can discuss at that moment for your queries. So let's start on this. So first of all, we aware of like what are the different ways to handle a sync request. So first we have this callback, we have this promises and async await. So as we are know that like async await was recently introduced in ES6, and they are, you can see, the better way to write your promises in a linear way. So the last thing which is again coming in this sequence is observables, and we will be thinking like why we need observables. So first of all, they are coming as a native to JavaScript and they are in a proposal stage. So uh, after some time in the next, I think ES6 release, we might see that observables can be the part of this system. But right now we have different libraries. With the help of those libraries, we can actually implement the observables and use the concept. So what observables are, why we need it, so let's discuss about it. So first of all, when we say what is an observable, so the mostly when so in the JavaScript implementation, we know there is a design pattern and we say observer design pattern. So observables are basically implemented on observer design pattern. And what that observer design pattern is, so just see this image. I can just try to explain you in with the help of this image only. So in the Twitter, let's say there is a person and there can be multiple subscriber for that person. So at any moment the person sends a new tweet, all the users are getting notified at that moment only. So in this case, we need not to ask every time, okay, do you have any tweet, or some other user has any tweet. So it is something, the subject here, I can in a observer design pattern in term, if I'll say, if the subject pushes or holds a new value, all the observers will get notified at that moment only. So simply you can understand the power that any entity, any variable, any object, if that value can change over the time, all the observers will directly get notified, and we need not to ask that particular entity, or we need not to check that entity continuously. But it's because of that design pattern, the observables are useful. So this is what is observable and why we need observables. So first of all, to add subscription to synchronous and asynchronous data, what can be the synchronous data? So simply the first is streams of data. So we know that we work on WebSocket communications where we get data very frequently. So just think of, if we need to handle it with the promises, how difficult it happens. What we can do is, we know that observables can hold the values and multiple values at a time. So, and whenever there is a change, they can notify their subscribers. So in this case, when we have such continuous streams of data, observables are really helpful to deal with such scenarios and effective ways to deal it. Again, if I'll say events are also, you can think of asynchronous, because we don't know like when such clicks are going to happen. So we register the click listener for it. So such cases also, observables can handle it effectively and pass the propagation changes further. Angular reactive forms, so those who are from Angular, they must be aware of like we in the Angular reactive forms, they are again they are just observable entities, and whenever there is an inform something is changed, we just notifies, because this is again observables. And what else we can do with the help of observables? So most of us, like who works with the state management pattern, be it NGRX or Redux, simply what we can do is, there can be any entity in a store, we can just make it as an observable. So at any moment of time, something got changed, all my subscriber will get notified. So we need not to pass or connect and all those things. We need not to do it. It's simply that pattern, which is basically handle such thing. So in a React as well. So currently the person who works on React, because right now Rx is not implemented React, but the Redux part, the Redux is basically using observer design pattern only to let my components know about the something is changed, but it is their own observer design pattern implementation. Observables are different. So just giving the heads up, like observer design pattern is really helpful in such scenarios. Next thing is, which actually a pain area for a lot of us, the passing data through multiple components hierarchy. And how we do it, we have this props binding. With the props, we pass the data sequentially from one level to another level, or we have this context API. But sometimes it is pain, because we need to pass data through the components which the data is not required to it, just to maintain the hierarchy. For such scenarios also, what we can try to do it, whatever the data is, we can make it as an observable, and the subscriber can be at any level, at any component level. They will directly get notified at any point of time there is a change. That props binding and passing, that will not be required in this case. So I'll show you this similar example in the further slides. So, and I can show you like how effectively we can handle it, these scenarios. Okay, so the basic point, why and what is difference between observable and promise, how it is different from this thing. So first difference is, promises are eager and observables are lazy. So what does that mean? I'll just try to give a very basic, a practical example. Just think of a promise. A term is, simply think of, there is a class teacher. He has promised like he will deliver a lecture at 9. Next day, what happens, like class had made a mass bunk, and he reaches the class and he finds like nobody's there, but still he made the promise, he's delivering the lecture. But think of the observable, they are bit smart. What they will do, they will just cancel this session and they won't perform the action. Just trying to give you like idea like what that mean. So what the context is, simply observables watch, like if I have any subscribers, if they don't have any subscriber, they won't perform the action. Let's say you want to make an API call to get the data, they will see if I have subscribers, then only I'll make that API call, so that unnecessary request will be avoided, but not in the case of promise. So we can just see a demo related to it and how it happens practically. There is a on this DOM, I have just fetch user, and you can think of it's an API call, although I'm just not making the API call but trying to simulate it. So first of all, I have this button and I'm using a query selector. We'll see first of all how observables are lazy. So I have this from event and I'm handling this, I'm using this Rx observable that from event. This is nothing but you can think of, I'm just using this function to make something as an observable entity. So this will be my observable entity. I'll discuss about these operator later, but as of now, this is observable entity. And what I'm trying to do is, this button click will give me a lot of events. I'm not interested to all of it. So what I simply want to do is, I just want to map it and get the required data. So you can just compare map with the JavaScript array map, And here, and I'll just return the timestamp, like when that button click was happened. Here I have this subscriber to it. So whenever there is a new click is happening, I should basically get notified. So let's try this point. I clicked that button, I got this response. Again, I clicked, I got the response. Now, here comes the part when we say observables are lazy. What does that mean? I said, like, if there is no subscribers, the action won't perform. So let's say think of the button click was happened and I was making some API call in between here after making the timestamp. So what it will do, observer will see like if I have some observer or not, and if I'll try to do fetch user, there is not even this first log. It basically cancels that action which got performed if the subscription were not present. Now let's say the same case in case of promise, and how promise does in this scenario. Same case was in the promise. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I have this add event listener, and as soon as I listen to the click, I make this check auth. Check auth, basically you can think of a API call, because here inside a check auth I have the set timeout, and set timeout is just to simulate the API call, and it is wrapped inside a promise. So what promise does, we know it. Once the response is response is there, we resolve or reject it by the response. So here I'm just resolving as a true. So let's say what happens if I'll click on fetch user. First promise is now returning value. Here I came because that got resolved, and then my inside dot then block, I'm just handling it. Now think of the then block. This then block was not there, and only the API call. So simply the way I was handling in observable, just trying to simulate. I was just making the API call, and the promise is just returning me the value. It is not checking that is that particular part is handled or not. Now, if I'll click on the button, ideally in the case of observable, they should not, nothing should happen. But if I'll click here, again, this made that API call. So promises doesn't care like is somebody is listening to it or not. So that's why they are eager, and observables are lazy. And I'll show you like how important that scenario can be when I'll discuss about a few practical scenarios in the later slide. But a considerable difference is this particular point. Now another point as a difference is promises returns a single value, but observable can return multiple values over time, and we discuss about it. So let's say how that particular scenario is. Okay, simply I'm just using one of the function interval. What it does, it just built-in function which actually gives me values 0 1 2 3 4 5 continuous value over the time. So simply this is my observable, which is I am subscribing to it and I'm getting the data here. Now not in the case of promise, because what we need to do is if we want to get a new data, I'll again have to call the API, I'll again have to set the promise, again resolve it. So this is basically a good example of like observables can return multiple values over the time. Now the next difference is uh, they are cancelable. Cancelable, that means what? Here what I'm doing is I'm just getting the log till 5. Why? Because I'm just checking like if the data is greater than 5, I should unsubscribe. So simply, if you are interested in latest top 5 records, then you can just unsubscribe, and the next time you won't get notified. Simply in the case of Twitter, I told like if person is following some subject, and if he want to unsubscribe, he can unsubscribe, but other candidates who are still subscribing to that candidate, they will get notified to it. So this was the basic difference between observables and the promise. Okay, so I'll just stop here, and I'll take few questions. If till this point, do we have any questions? So guys, please. Okay, so I'll consider it like no questions.
Yeah, everything is good for me. Thank you.
Okay, sure, thanks. So we'll jump to next point, which is I talked about a lot of things like observables, observer, subscription, and how it looks like. I'll just show you a basic example. Think of this is my observable, and here I have observer. How they are connected? They are connected with the subscription. This is my subscription channel. Now, how observable will actually tell my observers that something got changed? So observers has three methods. They have next method, error, and complete. So whenever there is a new value, my observable is having that instance and they can call the next value of observer. So simply think of the function. When we know that like function a first class object and we pass it, and you can invoke it again from the another function. Simply you can think of the instance of this observer is passed to that observable, and I'm just calling it. So that's why whenever there is a new change, observable knows I need to update my all the observers. They can notify with the next. Same case in case of error, or it is complete. So when we say unsubscribe is nothing but it's just a complete method of my observable when we invoke it. Same thing, let's see a practical scenario, practical example, how a basic observable, because we saw that interval API, we saw this from event. So how those things are implemented. The native implementation of it is straightforward. What we do is, as I told you, here I have this hello observable, which I'm creating it. I have this one subscription. What it does, it takes a observer as an entity, as an argument, and this is something you can just think of. This observer instance is passed to it. When I'll add one more subscriber, same thing, same reference will be passed to that observable. Now it has the power because it has the reference. What it can do it, whenever there is a next value, it can just call this next method, again next method. If it want to complete it, you can just say simply complete it. So I got the logs hello and world. I didn't got again log because it was already completed. Same case, if there is some, I am just wrapping it inside try catch block so that if there is any error, that error we can catch it and also let my subscribers like there was some error into it. So this is a basic implementation, like how observables are created. We actually won't need such implementation because most of times the way like we have in Lodash or underscore, we have utility functions. Simply similar way in observables using RxJS, we have such utility function. We saw that interval is one of the case. Uh, we are going to use it only, but how that implementation is done, how we can do it, this was the example for it. Okay, so next we'll discuss about few technical things which are related to RxJS, because now we discussed about what is observable, how it is different from promise, and how observables are created, how it looks like. Now I told you like these are not native to JavaScript. We have a library which is called RxJS. By use of it right now we are using in Angular or any other JavaScript world. So let's discuss about few technical terms. When we say programming paradigm, there are two types of paradigm: imperative programming and a declarative programming. What imperative programming is, just say this block. What I'm trying to do is I need to perform the summation of these three values of my array. The first way what I can do is I have this calculate sum function. I have this the looping way where I can simply loop it through and return the sum, and here I'll get the sum. I'm aware of like I know like how that thing is going on. This is the imperative of way of writing the program. Another way, instead of doing it, I could use array reduce method, and inside reduce method I can just have this previous next and returns it. But here what reduce is doing, we are not sure. Are they using actually for loop, are they using for each loop, or something else? But we are sure like if we do this way we will get this sum. So there the computation logic is hidden. That is actually declarative programming. And when we talk about functional programming, so functional programming is also a declarative programming, comes under a declarative programming. Inside the declarative programming, again, one thing which actually when you work with observables, we say reactive programming. Reactive programming is what? You react to changes. Simply, I have a socket, I have this observables there. I got the new data. I need to react to those changes. Let my all subscribers aware of like what got changed. So when some propagation of changes and that related programming, if I'm doing, that comes under reactive programming. So RxJS is basically a reactive programming, which is basically concerned with data streams. Okay, so next I talked about reactive programming. So here RxJS is not the only library in JavaScript, but we have Beacon.js, Cafe, Callback, Cycles, a lot of other libraries are there. So I just mentioned top 5, but there are a lot of other libraries are there which provides you the reactive programming. And this ReactiveX is one of the community which actually helps you to write asynchronous programming using observables. And this is not limited to JavaScript. Here you can see it is for Java, .NET, Scala, Clojure, and a lot of other programming language also support this paradigm for reacting to the changes, continuous data stream, asynchronous programming using this observable design pattern. Okay, so okay, the one thing which I told you, like before going to this RxJS point, I told you like I'm going to show you like how observables can be really powerful. And in the component hierarchy, I can just show you like how that actually is useful. So simply think of, I'm working on any of the framework, and I have this one component which actually emits the values, and I have two listener components which basically listens to those values. Now they can be at any sequence. They can be children component, they can be siblings, or completely different. But what I want to do is I just want that if I simply type something, my all observers should get notified to it. And this is happening here. Now one of my component thinks, okay, I don't want to listen to the changes now. I can just unsubscribe to it. Now what happens? This component will not get the new value, but here the next component is still getting the value. Again, I can resubscribe. So whatever, if I'll type again, I'll get notified. So think of the same scenario. We are from, we all work on such scenarios and we are aware of like this, we can implement it. But again, how complex the your logic will be if I need to pass with the props, or those scenarios where I can unsubscribe and resubscribe. If I'll just show you like how easy it is implemented and how easily it is done with the way of observables, and very limited scope is. So what is there? Whenever you are when you are typing it here, I have this send message method. What it does, it just sends this message to a service. I'm just making a service as a wrapper so that it is a singleton entity and we can actually use it anywhere by injecting it. So I'm just using a service. Here what I'm doing is in the send message, I have this dot subject dot next. I have this method, and I showed you like the basic implementation of observables where we have this next method. This is that next method only, but this subject is coming from RxJS. So think of, instead of writing your observable and that passing the sequence, it is just hidden logic, but it is just giving me two things. You can call next method, you can call error method directly. And Angular actually uses subject a lot for passing the values by this way. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just saying, this is my next message. Who will listen to it? The one who will basically subscribe to it. So where the subscription call is. So basically what I'm doing is I have this get message method where I'm keeping this observable entity. This is nothing but an observable entity, and this is the next method of it. So who is subscribing, who is basically subscribing to that part? Here I have these two components, and here these are my two components where these are basically subscribing to it. That means they can be at any moment, and they can be at any place. I just need to inject this service here. I just need to have this service instance here, and at any moment if I have some change, I'll just get notified, because the subscribe and message.text is nothing but the same text which I'm actually passing from it here. Now how we can unsubscribe and subscribe? So here when I'll do unsubscribe, I'm just calling this unsubscribe method, and unsubscribe is again this observable complete method under the hood, which actually completes the subscription for that particular instance. If I want to resubscribe, again I can just call this method and my subscription channel will get established. So very simple, very linear implementation with the help of this observables. And think of wherever you are passing all those, wherever you are using these things to pass the data, and we are using all those functional binding, we are using props, that thing can be simplified by using this concept. Okay, so we discussed about these libraries. So guys, do we have any question at this point so that we can take it for whatever is discussed?
Yes, I have some.
Sure.
In the streaming data where the observer completes, sorry.
Yes.
It deletes the subscription like unsubscribe to.
Sorry, I could not understand. So you mean to say
when you have the observer with the streaming data coming from the next function,
okay,
right? When you do the complete, that deletes all the subscriptions from like unsubscribe do for any instance of it?
No, it actually won't delete the subscription because let me show you the code again. Actually, it's a good question, and this is my subscription instance. It won't delete the subscription, but at that moment it will just complete that observable, because observables that you can complete it. Simply you are unsubscribing one of the Twitter follower, but you can again resubscribe it. Your instance will be there in this message subscription. So what happens most of the time, when actually the component in Angular case, when we destroy the component, those subscription remains, and that actually becomes the memory leakage for it. So it is advisable to destroy those instances as well. So to answer your question, those instances will be there, but we are just calling a complete method so that they are not listening to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Did I answer?
Yes, thank you. I have another. It is not better to use promise instead of take one or first of observables?
Actually, we can actually do it. Those are the operators where we can use take one. So take one is simply, I told you, like you can limit your observables to say, let's say I shown you this example where I was taking only top 5 values, right? And so simply take one is nothing but it just doing the same thing. It just takes the first value and then it will just unsubscribe, or it will simply say, okay, complete this instance because I don't want to listen to the further changes. So those are again the operators. And the utility function, you can just say I created my own by using this this way. I guess this was the way I created. Under the hood, the take one is also doing the same thing.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, guys, any other question, or I can move forward? And
Mind, we have one question on the chat. Can the observable unsubscribe all the subscribers?
Not all actually, because it is observable has only 3 things of observers. It is next method, complete method, and the error method. So what happens? They can just say like this particular instance is complete. So what will happen? Okay, as your point is, at any moment my observable will say if it is completed, my all the you can say all this observer will not listen the value till again resubscribe. So yeah, to answer your question, the observable can do at any moment, but in a component a way where we are actually making this context and we are actually passing this instance here, that will be available. But yeah, everybody will not get the message from that only. So did I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So now discuss about RxJS operators. So operators, I told you like the same thing when we work on Lodash or underscore, we have utility functions. Operators are just that. To handle asynchronous scenarios, you need not to create your own observables every time. Use those operators and your life will be really simple. So these are the utility functions. Next thing is they are provides a simple solution, a declarative solution to a complex asynchronous task. What are the operators? Example, map. Just compare a map with the array. Similarly it does for the observable. You can just take one observable and return another by doing some modification. We have this filter, we have reduce. From event, I shown you like where I was taking the instance by using fetch user, and from event I was capturing the event. And debounce, so we know it like debounce, how on the input it works. Same thing on the observables, we can actually use it. So these are few operators of RxJS. Now, as I told you, like RxJS is the not the only library for this implementation, but then why we need RxJS and why RxJS only? So first of all, it is good for reactive programming because it gives me a lot of utility functions and to handle such events, asynchronous based call, callback related calls, and I can handle it very effectively. Second thing, it is backed by Angular. When we download the Angular package, RxJS will always be there because Angular event system, routing, Angular router, they are completely written using observable concept, using those RxJS library only, and the HTTP service as well. So those who are from Angular 1 background, they will be aware of that in Angular 1 there was a HTTP service, Angular HTTP service, and that service used to return us promise. And then whenever we got the data, we used to by using .then or .catch. Here Angular is now not using promise. Instead of that, if you use this Angular HTTP service, they actually returns the observable instance. So simply I can subscribe and get the data from it. So this is one of the reason like why RxJS is more famous than other. Again, I talked about their utility functions, and the RxJS first of all is not dependent on any framework. Angular is just using it inside it so that React, so that Vue or any other JavaScript framework can use it, and it is open to all. And even it can be used at client side and server side, at both side. Using in server side, we can use it by using Node.js. So this is one more thing, like community support. Definitely because of this Angular, it has a great community support. So I talked about like operators, and let me show you like how many operators are there. I think it can be more. There is a website, and I actually follow this website whenever I want to see any of the observable. And if I'll tell you, the list is quite huge. So when you'll start reading it, you will think, okay, what is important and what is not. So what I try to do is whatever, for my understanding, what I found like was really important operators, and I was using in my Angular work. I just tried to list it there so that we can discuss like what that operator is useful. And operator, again, you can think of a utility function which will solve a problem for us. Okay, so very famous, we have two operators, from and off. What those operator does, so think they can, you are just making an API call and you are getting a response. Okay, now that response can be a promise. If I'm on Angular 1, that response can be in promise, or simply if I have some entity, let's say it can be array or some values, what I want to do is I just want to use it as an observable. So simply, if I want to convert any entity, JavaScript entity, be it array, be it object, be it promise, I just want to convert it to observable so that I can have multiple observers and they can get notified at any moment that my observable is getting changed. So the from is the operator which basically converts those entity into observable. So think of this was an array. I passed into the from operator of RxJS, and here it returned me the continuous value 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the way like observables and how where I'm getting it. This is my source one. This is my observable instance. I have this subscribe code here, and I'm getting the continuous value here. Now think of there was some API and which actually returns me promise. Okay. Now this API resolves some data. What I can do it, I can wrap this promise entity inside this from, and very simple. I just need to do from, and this is the promise only, a native implementation of promise. So whenever the promise will get resolved with the value, that value will be accessible to me as an observable. So this is the benefit of using a from operator, and similarly we have this off operator. The only difference is here I was passing the array and I was getting a linear value 1 2 3 4, but off is simple. If you have object, if you have array, just pass it, it will return you just making an observable. So here in the case of array, it will return you an array as an observable. So whatever your use case is, if you want an array and each value from it, use from. If you just want to convert an array to observable, use off operator, and it's quite simple. Write off code, pass the value, it will be an observable entity. So that is, I think, the most which I use to convert any entity to observable. And now what I can do is we can discuss about few scenarios which I feel we face day to day, and how those scenarios we can effectively handle it with the help of observables. Okay, and so let's discuss about a scenario where a stock market scenario. In a stock market, let's say we have purchased few shares, 3 or 4 shares we have purchased, and we have a dashboard. Now what I want to get notified, what we do it like how my share prices are changing for each share value at any moment. Is my portfolio is in loss or profit? How much profit is there? How much loss is there? So simply what I'll need to do is I need to keep track of each share, and then I need to perform the calculation of summation. What was the initial value, so that initially like how it was purchased and now current prices is there. So now think of when I talking about share market, the here share values get changes very frequently. So to handle that scenario where the randomness is lot of, because any share can send you the next data very frequently. Now observables shines because observables can handle such values and returns you value whenever the change is there. So how I'm trying to simulate that scenario is I have this, I'm just using a Angular service. This service is not related to this, but I'm just using it to make it as a singleton entity. And here you can think of this, these are my purchase price of 3 shares. These three shares are from I'm just taking an example of some telecom companies of India. So the base price or the purchase price was 300, 200 and 100. Okay, now what I want to do is as my day will start, I should get notified like how my portfolio is changing, how each share is performing, and every time what is the total portfolio is it in a red or is it in a green. So this is the scenario, and we will handle it with the 3 operators, and each operator does its own unique way to handle it. How the different is, first let's talk about combine latest. So combine latest operator, as the name suggests what it does. Now I've started getting the my day has started, and now I'm just getting the feed, I'm just getting all the share values, and they are very random. So how to read it and what is happening here. So first of all, this is my initial purchase price. What I can do is simply I can just calculate it like I purchased in 600 rupees. Now at any moment, if you'll just calculate this thing, a single row, you will get notified like is your portfolio in red or green. So what is happening, combine latest basically doing a thing where, okay, so what combine latest is doing, combine latest is basically combining all my observable entity. Why I'm doing it, simply this is my one subscription for Jio, Airtel and Idea. These 3 things which are observable entity. One thing what I can do is I can have different observables, and I can just perform the calculation by my own, because and here only 3 shares. Now think of there were 100 shares in my portfolio. Do I need to write observable for everything? So wherever the case is like few entities are related, you can just wrap it inside a combine latest, and this combine latest gives you a single observable entity. Simply, you are avoiding 100 subscriptions, 100 observables, and wrapping it inside a single entity, and I'm just subscribing to it. So what it does, combine latest basically returns the value, whatever is the latest value of each observable, it will just return me. So think of it is the latest value now. If I'll jump to the second share, it is similar, but why I got notified? Because this particular share was changed, this particular entity was changed. So it basically gives me a chain of all the entity which you are combining the latest value of it. But it also makes sure one thing, you should have at least one value from each observable, each entity, then only it will return you the value. And so your portfolio is, so simply calculate each line and you will be notified like your portfolio is in a green or red. So we solved a problem, first problem. Now one thing, another scenario where actually combine latest can be used, it was from server. Now I'm just telling you from the client side how we can use it. So simply this is a form, and in that form I have two fields. So first of all, I need to select the student and I need to pass some of the entity. So I'm just selecting a student ID. Okay, and then what I'm doing is I just writing some value. I made an API call, I got the response. So what combine latest is doing, I told you, whatever observable it is wrapping inside it, it will wait for each observable to return minimum one value. So here I was wrapping 3, it will wait for 3 observables to emit at least one value, and then only it will perform the action further. So here from, let's say, API call, I can have subscription, I can make the API call from here. So what happens, like most of time we need to handle such scenario by making like, I'll just disable the button and all those things, I'll do it. But again, if such scenarios is there, combine latest actually we can use it, and it waits for the observable to complete. It was actually really important operator, so that's why I discussed a lot. Same scenario, the share market scenario, I have this the merge operator. And what that merge operator does, merge is the same syntax, no difference at all from combine latest. Instead of combine latest, I have this merge. Only the thing is, but response will be different. And how and what the difference is, you can see it. I'm just getting the logs but not the individual one. So what it does, merge is simply merging everything. So 3 subscriptions are there. At any moment, whatever is changed, I'll just get notified. And here it's quite random, but that can be the case. You just want the latest update from the share market, like what got changed. I can use this merge operator. Now the third operator, and before discussing it, I have this concat operator, and we know it. We have learned like concat is one of the way we do in a JavaScript to concat few things. Concat basically maintains the sequence. So if I'll do the concat, what it will do, I have concated. So concat is again same syntax. I have concated 3 things. It will make sure like if the first observable is complete emitting the values, then only it will take the value from others. So it will make sure like if I want to get notified by like of my portfolio in a sequence, like how my first share performed, top 5 updates I got, and then only I'm getting the updates for the other shares. So if you want to maintain the sequence, use concat. If you just want to get notified randomly, use merge operator. Okay, so this was one of the use case where we use those operators, and how effectively they can help us to manage such operations. One more scenario will take, and again 3 operators as a savior I'm going to talk about. Okay, now what I want to do is, I have this form where I have these books, maths, chemistry, and physics. And what I want to do is I just want to add a quantity. And as soon as I add the quantity, okay, one thing, let me just slow my network so that I can simulate that API call, because I'm going to make the API call here. So what I'm trying to do is, as soon as I start adding quantity, I should get notified like what price you need to pay. So simply here 100, 700, and 1300. So what my merge map operator doing it is basically, let me just show you the code first and then we can actually discuss it. Okay, the merge map. So what my merge map did, this is my form, the current form which I have, and on that form, this is my Angular form, and it is some value changes. It basically returns me an observable instance. Simply what it says that in that form, whatever will get changed, I'll notify you. Simply, whenever there is some change, I'm using this merge map operator, which currently we are talking about. What it does, whenever there is some change, it is making this API call to calculate the book price. Now, just to understand what the merge map is, it is basically merging two things, the outer observable and the inner observable. So think of, if you are dependent on few things and then only you want to make some API call or perform some operations, you should use merge map operator or concat map or switch map, because the context is similar. But where I should use the merge map operator is one observable entity and another observable entity, and I want to merge it and I want to make work in a synchronous way. I'm using is pipe. The pipe is nothing but a syntax to write this operator, and it is just a syntax. Okay, so later on I can just subscribe to it, and whenever this response is there from the calculate book price, the total price will be available here. So what is happening, the same thing is happening. As soon as I start typing the values, I made that API call with taking those values. Okay, those were the API calls with one, actually it is just a sample example, but still you can think of there were 3 API calls because of 3 requests, and I got the response. Now same thing I can do it with the help of concat map, but again the way I discussed the concat. So concat basically maintains the sequence, and here also it will help us. So 1 2 3. Now what is happening in merge map? What happened, like as soon as I was typing, it was just making the calls randomly. I typed something, I made a call. Again, I typed something, I made a call. But here concat makes sure that the concat is making sure, concat map is making sure that if that inner observable, that means my API call, is it completed? If it is completed, then only it will pick the value from outer observable, the new value, and then it will make call. Where it can be helpful, let's say sometimes we have some APIs and one API response is required to make API call for other request. Here in this case, when the sequence matter, we can use concat map, and where you don't need the sequence to be maintained, we should use merge map. So here all the sequence were maintained with maths 1 book 1 2 and 1 2 3, and we got the result. Okay, the last operator, and I think the most important operator, and those who are working on Angular and who are using the API calls, they will be aware of the switch map and why we use it a lot. So you will be thinking of that, I just wanted to calculate the price and still we were making 3 times API calls, and why to do it? How can we avoid such case? So for that purpose, we have this switch map operator, and how effective it does, let me just show you. First of all, I'll go to switch map, I'll go to network tab, I'll add 2 and 3. If you'll see it, I just got the response 1, and what happened to this 2 previous requests? They got cancelled. So what happened basically, that the same thing, the syntax is similar. I have this switch map. The switch map is having outer observable, again inner observable. What it does, as soon as it took the first value, it made the request, and the request was going. The API was still, I was still able getting the response, and it checked, okay, I got the new value. So what it does, it cancels that observables. And as we know that observables are cancelable, that's why only I'm able to cancel this particular part. So most of time what happens in our application, we make some API call again and again trigger, and because of some scenarios, duplicate API calls triggers, and we make our server busy. Because of that, we can actually restrict that call from our client as only, because we have these observables which are cancelable, and that's way we can basically handle it. So that's why this is the most important operator when we work on the APIs, and the switch map is operator for us. So let me just conclude. This is all about like commonly used RxJS operators, and I've just listed like these are my commonly used operators, these 6, and from and off I can say these 6 are I really use it in Angular. So how I can, so let me just conclude this part, what we understood and about the observables. So first of all, observables are currently not native, but they are proposed to be native in a JavaScript. So once they introduce in a JavaScript, we will use it as a native implementation. We do the promise, and as we see it, still if you want to use it, you can use it with the RxJS library, and you can use those benefits. You can take the benefits of your observables if you are working on such scenarios where you where if you need to have multiple values. Observables can return multiple values, so can be effective to handle data streams. Definitely, if you are working on such scenarios where you have you need to work on sensors data or the continuous streams of data, you can still use your observables to effectively handle it. Again, RxJS is a library. We discussed about RxJS, and this library is implementation of observable, because right now it's not native. We need to use it, and it's powerful because it's an integral part of my Angular ecosystem. And the last thing, RxJS operators, and I shown you those all the examples, the share market example, and this the book purchase form where I was performing the operation. All those scenarios I can effectively handle it by doing performance optimization as well and writing very less code. So guys, that's it from this presentation. Thank you for listening.